Hey everyone, I made this second video because some people couldn't hear the first one. So I'm calling this part two, but it really is a shorter version of the first one. I want to begin by just talking about colonization. For those of you who don't know, colonization is when a an oppressor comes to um, go to another place and they colonize people who, with the intention of oppressing them, using their power to control them, to marginalize them, to do the will of theirs. So if I look at America, America colonized parts of Africa. So the people that they colonized in Africa speak English. If I look at France, France came to Africa with their weaponry, um, their tactics of manipulation and coercion, and they colonized people, and those people speak French, and it's called Senegal, right? The country of Senegal is colonized. It's a colony, a property of France, right? There are other countries that, such as Spain, that colonized parts of Africa, and those people speak Spanish. So there are different countries who came to Africa and colonized them. They oppressed them, they enslaved them, they used the resources. So Africa was divided up by different countries. And they also took people from Africa who were from different tribes, different nations. And what they did was they brought them to America. So when the slaves who came to America were from different tribes, had different traditions, different hierarchical systems. And what they realized that these people spoke different languages, and they were afraid that they might connect and have uprisings. So what they did was that they made their tongue, their language illegal, and they stopped them from being able to practice their culture, because part of being colonized is you take on the colonizers' traditions, their habits, their speech, their language, their mindset, and you teach them that what the thing about them is bad or wrong, that their goal is to be more like the oppressor. So that becomes the standard. And then what happens is, as a therapist, that generationally, that the descendant of the slave, the oppressed, learns to make this the standard, that their culture is not the standard, their African traditions aren't the standard, because each generation gets further and further apart, away from those generational patterns. They lose their ability to speak, and they lose their ability to know where they came from, because there's a difference, right? A difference and a distance that happens between this African slave who came here and the American who now live here in 2023. And that difference really encapsulates a lot of loss. So sometimes we don't realize what we've lost during that journey. We don't realize what we've lost in that slave trade. We don't realize what we've lost and what's been put into us until we have an awkward moment or an oppressive moment or a racist moment or a something. And I want to share on the second day of Black History Month a moment that I had personally. Last year, I was asked to speak on a panel, which I'm always wanting to do. And the panel was about private practice. So it was me. I've been in private practice since 2002. I've been a therapist for 30 years, even though I look like I'm 15, but 30 years. And a friend of mine, a colleague who had been in practice for 30 years, Caucasian woman, and then another person who had been in practice for 1 year, passed her master's. And I was the first person to speak. And they said, "Tell me about your private practice." And I said, "Hey, I'm so proud of myself." Chest out, right? Because when you're proud of yourself, the energy goes up, the adrenaline goes up, the chest goes out. And I'm so proud, because for me, I am the picture of success in my head. I see 45 clients a week. I take different streams of income, but my primary stream of income is insurance. The lowest is below 50 that I get paid from insurance company. The highest might be about 85, 100 I get paid. And I'm talking about I'm certified in different modalities, and I do telehealth on this platform, and I do in person and all this great stuff. And then they go to the second person who has a master's. And the second person says, "Hey, Latoya. Hey, Amina." The second person says, "Hey, I've been working for about a past year. I just got my master's about a year ago. And I'm not certified in all those trauma modalities and different techniques like Candice. But I do make more money than Candice." Now, it's not about the money. I just want to say that it's not about the money. But the person said, I make at least $50 more than Candice. Our highest insurance rate, I make $50 more than that. And I sat there. Now, you know how my chest was up like this. My chest goes like this, a little caved in. And I'm listening to this. What? And the person said, I don't see 45 people. That's a lot of people, Candace. I see about maybe 15. I make a good living. So then the third person who's been in the same amount of years says, I don't have as many certifications as Candace, but I do have a thriving practice. And I work 3 days a week. I don't work like Candace 5 days a week. And I make twice what Candace makes. And the student said, why do you guys not take insurance since, Candace seems to have more clients than you? And they both said in unison, we know our value. And it struck me right in my chest, right? And if you've ever been punched in the chest or seen a fighter punch in the chest, it takes all the air out of you. And I sat there and I was like, no, your value. And I said, wait a minute. Is this about me not knowing my value? I'm Candace Richardson Dickens. I got 3 names, Candace Richardson Dickens. I've got a whole alphabet behind my name. What occurred to me is, am I living my value? And I went home wondering, why don't I take private paid people? And fear came up, and I was like, wow, I'm usually not afraid from anything. I'm from Red Hook Projects in Brooklyn. I'm from Flatbush in Brooklyn. There aren't that many things that scare me. But when I thought about coming out of that, something came up to me and I had to pay attention to that. What is that something, right? I'm a degreed person. I do lots of trainings. I'm at symposiums and summits as a speaker. I've had 30 years in this business. Why am I feeling uncomfortable? And I spoke to all of my friends who are therapists, who are African American like me, or African Caribbean, African West Indian. And I asked them, why are you taking insurance? And they all said the same thing. If I don't take it, nobody will come see me. Nobody will pay for me. And when I heard all of them say that, I spoke to about 15 clinicians, it paralyzed me because I realized, oh my God, that's colonization. Because the colonization is about dominating people and getting them to believe that they're not enough. And if they're not enough, then they're willing to live in places that are not enough. They're willing to live in communities that don't have supermarkets. They're willing to allow some police to police their communities because they're not safe enough. They're not something enough. They're willing to accept jobs that are below their value. They're willing to accept treatment that dishonors them, right? Because in order for slavery that existed for that many hundreds of years, they had to put in us as African descendants that we're not enough to live outside of slavery. And then when slavery ended, we weren't enough, so we had to become sharecroppers and not be given what we had been promised, right? An acre and a mule. That there's this thinking that we had to police them because we're not enough. Prisons are full of people who are African American because there's a belief that we're not enough to manage ourselves. Right? So there's that belief that we're not enough that comes with slavery that's passed down from great grandfather to father to daughter to child. And sometimes we don't know when that belief comes up, but it's ingrained in us sometimes. And we never ask ourselves, why am I not enough? Why do I think that people won't value me? And that really is an evidence of colonization. When you can't explain why I believe this way, but I've never challenged it, I never check it, I never ask myself, wow, how is it that my peers who are of different ethnicity, how they can charge whatever they need to, that people will come to them? How is it that some people in my world, whether it's my beautician or my barber or the person who does my nails, that they can make a living and charge what they need to in order to live a life and they get full. But when people look at providers who are of African descent, the first thing they think is that we're not enough. And they challenge us many times about what school did you go to? Oh, you went to that school. And HBC is not very good. Or you went to that school, they must have affirmative action. And that is really colonized beliefs that there's something about us that's not enough, that's defective. And I often hear that amongst many people that I don't want an African American provider. I want a provider of this ethnic group or provider who looks this color. And then there's this narrative that goes about right well, that we're not enough. So what do we need to do? We need to prove ourselves. We get more degree than anybody else. We get more certified than anyone else. And we're constantly trying to prove ourselves. And then it becomes an experience, as Monique said, where you get tired of having to prove yourself and not just be yourself. And on the second day of Black History Month, I want to challenge everyone to recognize when you're having colonized thinking or when you're perpetuating a narrative that reinforces colonization about people not being enough and reinforcing people to jump through hoops to prove to you that they are enough. Or when you're noticing that, wow, I'm making myself small to make other people comfortable, to make other people safe. When I can't think about being the owner of something, I just got to think about being an employee of something. Because here's the truth, right? The truth is that People of African descent come from great people. And being colonized does not mean we were not coming from great people. It means that people came into the continent of Africa with guns and weaponry and advanced technology that caused people in Africa to not be able to fight back fairly. It wasn't a fair fight. And it's hard, especially when you divide a whole continent of people and you separate them. It's hard for them to come together to fight on their own. But one of the things I realized is that amongst my peers that, wow, these are really accomplished people. But many times we buy into the mindset that there's something about me that's not enough, or it's not safe for me to do this because of the color of my skin. And believe me, no one has ever said that to me. It's like no one's ever told me to go into the store and put my hands in the pocket. Like no one's ever said to me, when you see certain people, look away. You don't got to. No one's ever said to me, this is what racism looks like when it comes in the room. I know what racism is when it comes in the room because I can feel it. You don't got to tell it to me. I feel it. Children don't know what hate is until they feel it, they experience it, right? Some things you can't teach, but you learned it along the way. And one of the things that realized that no one ever said I couldn't be who I want to be and I couldn't not charge insurance. So what I did is that I announced it last year. I'm not taking insurance. And it has been such a different experience. I've been saying to people, wow, it's like freedom. What does that mean? It means no one tells me what I can charge or not charge. I can do what I really want to do. And that's really freedom. Because sometimes we as people of color, this goes back to slavery, our freedom gets limited by the belief that you're not enough to work for yourself and you've got to accept what people give you. And then we get dependent on what people say and we get dependent on approval. But can you imagine what it's like to only have to approve of yourself? If we can really live Black History Month, where we can only approve of ourselves and say, wow, I'm doing a good job. I'm just going to keep rocking and rolling and recognizing, wow, that there's this part of me that I'm carrying the legacy of my ancestors' dreams. But I'm also carrying the legacy of their insecurities because things happened to that made them insecure, that made them doubt their value and made them doubt their worth. And I've got to give myself permission to notice that legacy and not make decisions out of it, not cause that legacy to cause me to shrink out of desire to be safe, but give myself permission to allow people to be insecure and me not to take care of their insecurities or apologize for me being who I am and what I am. And really give myself permission to have a bigger dream and allow people to fit into that dream and to adjust to that dream. That is the legacy of Black History Month. It is the legacy of what will you change for you that will change the legacy behind you. I am so grateful that my grandmother from Lamar, South Carolina, changed the legacy and brought my mother up to Brooklyn, New York, to Red Hook. I'm so glad that my mother made the decision to go get her degree in education to change the legacy of my life so that we could have some comforts that she didn't have. And I'm so grateful that I've changed the legacy of my children by making sure they go to college without any student loan debt. We all have a legacy, and I'm grateful for the legacy I'm creating in my life of really being able to challenge my own oppressive thoughts about what I can and cannot be and can and cannot do. So I'm hoping that whoever hears this recognize that you have a legacy that people will follow and people will watch, but also look at what is your legacy for your life? How will you emancipate yourself, free yourself? What challenges will you make that you will show up and meet, right? How will you challenge yourself to be your best and do your best, right? Knowing that the best is yet to come. So this season, I want you to really think about all those things. And if it resonates with you, and if you think someone else needs to hear this, please subscribe, like it, share. Um, if you missed this and your friend told you about this, you can find more videos just like it on dopeblackTherapist.com on YouTube channel. And if you're looking for a therapist, hey, self-pay, but my website is CandiceRDickens.com. But I wanted to just share this because I think it needs to be said by someone who was also in the process of changing. And I'm so grateful that my ancestors have given me an opportunity to be more today than they could be yesterday. Bye. Peace.